Welcome to another gripping exploration into the minds of America's most notorious criminals. Today, we dive deep into the disturbing and calculated actions of Thomas Lee Dillon, a man whose cold-blooded murders went unnoticed for years, leaving communities shattered in fear. Dillon's story is a haunting reminder of how a seemingly ordinary person can harbor a monstrous secret. Born in 1950, Thomas Lee Dillon grew up in rural Ohio in what most would consider an average, unremarkable life, unlike many infamous serial killers. Dillon didn't come from a broken home, nor did he suffer from the kind of traumatic childhood abuse that is often a part of the narrative with many murderers. His upbringing was typical, with few red flags to indicate the darkness that would later unfold. However, Dillon showed early signs of being a loner. He was introverted, spending most of his time reading and wandering the outdoors. He had an intense fascination with firearms and hunting, skills he would later turn against innocent people. As an adult, Dillon's quiet demeanor and unassuming nature allowed him to hide in plain sight. To his neighbors and acquaintances, he was just an ordinary man who loved hunting and the outdoors. They had no idea they were living next to a man who would eventually be dubbed a serial killer. Between April 1, 1989 and April 1992, Dillon's seemingly uneventful life took a horrifying turn. Over the course of these 3 years, Dillon embarked on a chilling spree of random killings targeting hunters, fishermen, and outdoor enthusiasts who were simply enjoying nature. His method was simple but terrifying. He stalked his victims in remote locations, often during the early morning hours when they were most vulnerable. Then, with little hesitation, he would shoot them from a distance, leaving their bodies in the wilderness. Dillon's first known victim was 35-year-old Claude Hawkins, who was killed on April 1, 1989, while fishing at a remote lake in Tuscarawas County, Ohio. Hawkins' death initially puzzled investigators. There were no witnesses, and the remote location made it difficult to gather evidence. Dillon had chosen his victim well, and the lack of immediate leads allowed him to continue his spree. Following Hawkins' murder, Dillon went on to claim the lives of several more men, each killed in a similar manner. Over the next few years, he killed Donald Welling, Jamie Paxton, Kevin Loring, and Gary Bradley each time. Dillon's modus operandi was the same. He targeted individuals who were alone in secluded areas, took aim, and shot them from a distance, making it almost impossible for anyone to identify him. What set Thomas Lee Dillon apart from other killers was his complete lack of connection to his victims. Unlike many serial killers who are driven by sexual or personal motives, Dillon killed for sport. His victims were chosen at random, and he had no personal vendetta against any of them. He later confessed that the killings gave him a sense of power and control. He enjoyed the feeling of stalking his victims and eliminating them like animals. In interviews after his arrest, Dillon coldly admitted that he felt no remorse for his actions. He viewed his victims as mere targets in a twisted game of life and death. This level of detachment made Dillon particularly dangerous because it meant there was no clear motive or pattern for law enforcement to follow. Without a motive, investigators struggled to link the murders together, and for a time, Dillon seemed untouchable. For years, Dillon's random killings went unsolved, frustrating investigators who couldn't seem to find a connection between the victims. Local law enforcement agencies in Ohio were baffled by the seemingly unrelated killings. The randomness of his crimes and the lack of forensic evidence at the scenes made the investigation incredibly difficult. Without witnesses or a clear motive, Dillon remained at large. However, the turning point in the case came when a behavioral profile was created by the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit. Based on the details of the murders, profilers determined that the killer was likely a white male in his late 30s or 40s with a deep-seated need for control and dominance. This profile, while vague, gave investigators a starting point. It wasn't until an anonymous tipster came forward in 1992 that Dillon was finally identified as the prime suspect. The tipster, a former friend of Dillon's, told authorities about Dillon's strange behavior and his suspicious fascination with the unsolved murders. This lead, combined with the FBI's profile, allowed law enforcement to zero in on Dillon. Thomas Lee Dillon was arrested in November 1992 after investigators were able to link him to the murders through ballistics evidence. The rifle used in the killings matched one found in Dillon's possession, sealing his fate. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Dillon confessed to the murders, admitting that he had killed simply because he could, and son, working as a draftsman for a steel company. No one in his life suspected that he was capable of such horrific acts. During his confession, Dillon admitted to experiencing a thrill from killing. He claimed that the act of taking a life made him feel powerful, likening it to the way he felt while hunting animals. In his mind, his victims were no different from the deer and other wildlife he had hunted throughout his life. In 1993, Dillon was brought to trial for the murders of 5 men. His cold demeanor and lack of remorse during the trial further cemented his status as a dangerous predator. The prosecution painted a picture of Dillon as a man who killed for pleasure, a thrill seeker who found joy in the act of murder. The evidence against Dillon was overwhelming. Ballistics reports matched his rifle to the crime scenes, and his own confession was damning. In the end, Dillon was convicted of multiple counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Even after his conviction, the ripple effects of Thomas Lee Dillon's crimes were felt for years. The small communities where the murders took place were left reeling, grappling with the realization that a serial killer had been living among them unnoticed for years. Dillon's case became a chilling reminder that danger can lurk in the most unexpected places, and that even the most unassuming individuals can harbor deadly secrets. Dillon's reign of terror may have ended, but the scars he left behind on the families of his victims will never fade. The random, senseless nature of his crimes makes him one of the most terrifying serial killers in American history. While many serial killers are driven by deep-seated psychological or emotional issues, Dillon killed simply because he wanted to, because it made him feel powerful. Thomas Lee Dillon's case stands as a stark reminder of how elusive and unpredictable serial killers can be. His lack of a clear motive made him difficult to catch, and his ability to blend into everyday society allowed him to remain undetected for years. Dillon's crimes also highlighted the importance of behavioral profiling in modern criminal investigations. Without the work of the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit, Dillon may never have been caught. As we reflect on Dillon's chilling story, it's important to remember the lives that were lost. Dillon's victims were not just statistics, they were fathers, brothers, sons, and friends who were taken too soon by a man who viewed them as nothing more than targets. Their families will forever carry the burden of their loss, and the communities affected by Dillon's crimes will never forget the fear that gripped them during those dark years. Thank you for joining us in this deep dive into the life and crimes of Thomas Lee Dillon. If you found this video informative, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next true crime investigation. As always, we invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think drives someone like Dillon to kill? We look forward to hearing your insights.